government laws, rules, and regulations. If the criminal enforcement agents of the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, the BATF, the EPA, the FDA, the IRS, and other government agencies and departments are included, the U.S. could soon have a national police force of 200 to 300,000 people spying on the public and enforcing regulations, shades of the Gestapo in Nazi Germany or the KGB in Russia. The New World Order crowd are also talking about an international police force made up of UN troops from member countries to control internal crises, not just external crises, environmental abuses, and eventually opponents of the New World Order. And some of those troops are being trained in America, and there is growing concern that under UN Resolution 43, which Les Aspin, who is the head of the Defense Department, and Warren Christopher, who is the new head of the State Department, say they want to implement very rapidly, and UN Resolution 43 does call for more UN troops on our soil. Okay? The New World Army, or the UN police force, will soon reach 100,000 and could grow to 250,000 or more over the next 5 years. An undisclosed number of UN troops are now training on U.S. soil and could be used in America in some future state of national emergency, civil unrest, such as the Los Angeles riots or other upheaval. Let's look at some of the police state tactics which we're now having to live with. U.S. military and National Guard personnel have been undergoing training and exercises for several years for house-to-house searches, presumably for drugs or guns, for crowd control, and for domestic counterterrorism measures. Roadblocks are being randomly set up on highways around America by local, state, federal officials to conduct driver's license checks or warrantless spot checks of cars or their occupants for drugs, liquor, or especially for firearms. Local, state, or military helicopters are greatly increased frequency overflying cities, towns, neighborhoods, and individual houses at low levels looking for drugs, for surveillance, or for intimidation purposes. Many of these helicopters are black and unmarked. They're overflowing major metro areas all over the country today. Over the past 2 years, as training and enforcement exercises have increased, SWAT teams in black ninja suits and other government marshals and enforcement teams have had an increasing number of shootouts with innocent victims who are characterized by the government as religious fundamentalists, as cultists, as white supremacists, as left or right-wing extremists, as tax protesters, as gun law violators, etc. I think you all know the case of Randy Weaver, where the government came up because of a supposed firearms violation. A shotgun he sold was supposed to be 1/4 of an inch too thick, and they came up last August and they shot his son, and then they ultimately, with the sniper, shot his wife. He's on trial right now in southern Idaho. You might pray for the man. Hopefully he'll win in that trial. In any case, they came into the home of Donald Scott, who is a wealthy businessman in Southern California near Malibu. A SWAT team of about 30 broke into his home one night. The guy reached for a gun. They told him to put it down. He reached to lay it on the ground, and they shot him dead. And it appears that they wanted his property. And so they can come in and they can seize your property if they find any marijuana on it. Let's say you've got a teenage child and he has a party, and one of his friends comes over and they smoke grass in the backyard, and they leave a couple of pieces of grass in the backyard or something of marijuana. They can basically come in and confiscate your whole home, and you have no recourse, okay? So that's what they were trying to do to this guy, Donald Scott. They shot him. We'll talk more about what happened in Waco in a few minutes. The general tactic, whether used by local or federal state police officials, is to overwhelm and intimidate the suspected money launderer, environmental, financial criminal, gun law violator, etc. By invading his home or business with a SWAT team and or federal marshals or other government agents numbering 10 to 20 to 30 to 100, as in Waco, guns are often drawn, and if the victim of the attack makes any move, he is often shot. In fact, the police are told if they make any kind of unfriendly move whatsoever, shoot them. And in fact, if they shoot the victim, then they don't have to, the police don't even have to have much explanation in court. Okay, nobody testifies against them. Okay, we're moving towards a state of national emergency. The dictionary defines martial law as a system of government under the direction of military authority, an arbitrary kind of law proceeding directly from military power, having no constitutional or legislative sanction. It supersedes all civil government. Okay? Martial law was imposed in Los Angeles and was begged for by the public to quell the massive riots in the spring of '92, and could have been declared nationally had the riots continued to spread during the summer of '92. In fact, the riots did spread to, I think, 166 cities. I think in some future period of riots, and one has to wonder who stirred up those riots. They were not spontaneous. There were definitely several communist groups involved. But I have friends who believe that this could have been a trial run by the establishment. to see what was going on, to see how the people would respond. Would they call for martial law? They did. Kind of a test case, et cetera, et cetera. Suspension of the writ of habeas corpus is part of martial law. That's the right to trial by jury and protection from illegal imprisonment. This is a major element of martial law. In fact, indeed today in some parts of the country, people are being arrested for gun violations. They're being held in jail, and they're not even being charged. And that's totally unconstitutional, as is most of what we're talking about today. Potential for a state of national emergency or martial law in America in coming months or years is very high, perhaps to deal with the riots, the war on crime or drugs, to deal with dangerous, as they say, gun violations, a financial banking crisis, or some manufactured crisis. State of national emergency would be a quantum jump towards a socialist America and the New World Order. Hundreds of executive orders have been passed by Congress over the past few decades, giving the President total dictatorial control over every aspect of America's life when the President or his establishment bosses decide to trigger and implement a state of national emergency. Under a full state of emergency, tens or hundreds of thousands of Americans suspected of so-called hate crimes. A hate crime can be speaking out these days against a homosexual. I think very quickly speaking out against the government, as I'm doing now, will be relabeled as a hate crime. Financial or gun control crimes, criminal violation of any of tens of thousands of new government regulations, resistance to the New World Order or socialist America. All these are things for which people are likely to be imprisoned. It's my understanding that there are upwards to 47 concentration camps which have now been built around the United States. Some of these are called federal detention centers. Many of these are well disguised. You cannot overfly them. The FAA has special no-fly zones around the United States, and if you are in a small airplane and you fly over one, I suppose they won't shoot you down, but they will at least arrest you, and you may have some real problems when you get down. There's more and more information about these coming in all the time. Okay, perhaps this is why Bush more than doubled the prison capacity in the United States, and several dozen, as I said, upwards to 4 dozen large federal detention centers, still largely occupied, have been built since 1984. I wonder who they're for.